Welcome and welcome back to HR Office Hours. I am your host, Maddie, and I am joined today by Melanie Silva. Melanie was connected to me by a former guest, Krantzsy Boursiquot, and it was really exciting for me to be introduced to Melanie. At first, it took us a minute to kind of figure out, hey, why did Krantzsy make the intro? When you are kind of matched, when you're connected, you want to figure out what is the connection. It's so important to make community connections, network, get to know people, be open to that. And certainly for me, in this line of work in human resources, leadership development, and just being part of a greater community, when you work with people, when you're a human, you want to be connected. But it's always super fun to be like, okay, someone thought you need to get to know this person. Why is that? And Melanie and we discussed that, right? Like, Clancy put us together.
Yeah.
What was he thinking? What was he thinking? So Melanie, right? We had a little bit of fun, but before we get into that, Melanie, I always like to start. Tell us a little bit about you, and let's get into what we figured out. Why did Clancy put us together?
So thanks for having me, Maddie. Melanie Silva, if you watched Crancy's episode or you know Crancy, you know that we had to really think through this because Crancy's a poet and he's a very eclectic guy. And the reason he may have connected us could have been any number of things. And so we really had a time discussing and figuring out what what do you think he had in mind for us? Because there could be anything. But Crancy and I actually met at a networking event called Creative Mornings, where creative professionals gather one Friday a month and become enriched through each other and through sometimes a speaker. And Crancy has led that one time, and he did it so beautifully and orchestrated a group of 100 people to do something really magical. And that feeling that when you're part of a group, right, this all kind of ties back to community, right? We want to feel connected to other people. We want to feel engaged and a part of something. Creative Mornings is a way to do that. But the reason I'm joining you today is because I'm the executive director of a giving circle, and it's called the UNFoundation. And it's one of many roles that I have. I have my own business, Rad Work, and get to work with companies like Hinton Company that work in the culture and leadership space. So I also get to work with leaders, sometimes in HR, that are leading culture initiatives and championing recognition and figuring out ways to do HR things outside of the box. And so we think that's why Crancy brought us together.
Yeah, and definitely if y'all have not checked out Clancy's episode, it's worth a watch, worth a listen. We talked a lot about different kinds of workforce workers. So different episode, catch that. I'll link it in the show notes as well so that you don't have to go searching for it. But here we are, and so we were like, oh, I think that's the connection here. We have this through line, this thread that we both seem to be really passionate about. And you made an observation on what I was wearing, and I think that that's what was kind of like the light bulb moment. Do you remember
No,
that?
what were you wearing?
I was wearing my kitty cat blouse,
Okay.
and we started talking about the different types of service as well that we enjoy, and we had this conversation about what does it mean to serve our communities, and then light bulbs. So we were talking about a greater scope of what does community mean and engagement.
Yeah. And I think it triggers anytime I see cat things, it triggers a board that I've been sitting on for a long time that serves cats, called the Alice Fund. And so I thought, oh, a cat person. And
Yes,
and then
yes.
community is the center of that, right? And service. Um,
And so we were talking and we're like, okay, it's service and community and all of those things, and it ties back to engagement. And from a human resources employment perspective, anytime we look that up, we talk about engagement surveys and all of these things, and the leaders in this space like a Mercer, They show community involvement and finding purpose. They tell us the same things over and over and over, and yet we don't quite grasp on to what they're trying to tell us and how to translate that into our workplaces in a way that's meaningful to employees to really get their engagement and translate that into retention. And so some of what you were discussing with me was like, wow, these are different ways of looking at this. And so I was like, you have to come talk to us today about some of the things that you're doing and why this is a little bit of different take. Maybe not like wow so revolutionary, but it's like get it to the forefront because it may be something that other folks have not heard about, and it also brings to light what are other people doing in their communities, because yeah, we are in greater Chattanooga area and maybe some of our listeners are not in greater Chattanooga area, but I'm super curious what they're doing, or it gives them ideas like what can they do.
Yeah, totally. And I think, at the root of it is kind of a shift, right? We have an intergenerational workforce that is constantly shifting, right? Constantly bringing in a new generation of workers that grew up in a different era with different struggles. The current workforce is entering after maybe not having a graduation due to COVID. They dealt with a healthcare crisis that we navigated. They are craving connection. They are working smarter, not harder. So, how is the workforce meeting all the generations where they are? And so, for me, at the heart of this all is inclusion. What kind of employee led groups do you have at your organization? Are you asking them what they would want? We have the
Mm-hmm.
famous, the golden rule, right? Maddie, remember the golden rule? Treat others the way you would want to be treated. But what if it was the platinum rule? What if you treated others the way they wanted to be treated? What if we asked them what they wanted? And a lot of them may value the ability to connect with each other through the communities they live in, through the values that they have personally. Because when you come to work, you're asked to live the values of the organization. And if there's significant overlap between your personal values and the values of the organization, you have just an insane amount of synergy that's already there. But if there are things that really make you feel connected to your community and the things that you personally value that you can do through the workplace, gosh, that's really going to make me want to stay. That's really going to increase retention and potentially even help me recruit new employees, right, to work there because maybe I care, right? You mentioned engagement surveys earlier. Are you asking people how they feel at work? Are they tied to the mission? Do they know what the values are? Are they living, what you hope that they live when they come to work? And so, when you talk about data and retention, engagement, and culture, sometimes it's just as simple as asking people what they want,
Right.
right?
What a concept. What a concept. And it was funny because I think I mentioned to you the last time we spoke that very day I had been on the human resources subreddit, and that was literally a question that was asked. We are trying to find some community engagement or employee retention engagement ideas. Can you give me some? And a few people were like, have a barbecue, have a pizza party, buy mugs. And somebody finally said, ask your folks what they would like and would like to do. And it was like light bulb moment. Yes. And everyone started saying, yes, that's a great idea. Ask people what they would like and or would like to do. Because otherwise it's really difficult to get the buy-in, right? To like start with asking what people would prefer. Options are good if the options are good. And if so, people would prefer to have, autonomy agency if that's possible.
Oh yeah, right. Even if it is a free lunch, right? Maybe it's not a national pizza chain. Maybe it's a local small business that employees would feel better about supporting. But we don't know until we ask.
That's right. That's right. Pizza. Oh, pizza. Oh, the pizza thing. The pizza thing. I don't know. I have this thing. Okay, so confession. Pizza's not my favorite.
No?
That's just a me thing, not my favorite. And in my personal life, there's this thing that happens. My husband loves pizza. So he thinks that if I'm having a hard day, because I'm the person that in my home who usually cooks, and I actually like cooking, so no big deal. He does a lot of other things. Kudos to him. He'll be like, order a pizza. That's like punishment. I don't even like pizza. But when I worked in larger organizations, most celebrations were pizza. Pizza this, pizza that. Okay, half the people wanted one chain brand pizza, half the other wanted a different one. And it became a fight over you didn't get this one brand, you didn't get the other brand. And it was very like you could not please anyone. And then I'm lactose intolerant and I am gluten free. And it
No
was
wonder you
just,
don't like pizza.
and also, could you not get us something besides pizza? It's always pizza. And so the pizza parties become kind of like a trope, right? Of is this really appreciation when it's always the pizza party and it becomes something kind of meaningless because it's always the same thing, almost like you didn't really think about it. It just became the thing you did because you didn't want to give any thought to something else.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking to give ideas, right? To give ideas to other things that maybe we've not thought about before.
True, but I think there's also this mindset shift. So you mentioned that it takes time to think about it. It also takes time to ask people what they want. But if I care about retaining my workforce and having a culture where I heard someone once describe, culture is how you feel about going to work on Sunday night.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want people to feel energized about coming to work on Monday morning, then is it worth it to take the extra time to do maybe an annual or biannual engagement survey and to ask people how they want to be celebrated? And it could even be something that your employee led group, if you have one, right? Maybe an HR committee. It could be a employee resource group. It could be lots of organizations have employee led groups around innovation or engagement or events or you name it, depending on the size of your organization. It could be something that you task those groups with developing ideas around. It doesn't have to be Maddie or Melanie coming up with ideas that are best for your organization. And it doesn't have to take a lot of time. I think sometimes we build up in our minds that we need to balance, like it's a spectrum, action, taking action and doing, and inclusion, which is
Mm-hmm.
sometimes feels like it's at the opposite end of that spectrum. And in business, right, we want to move quick, we want to be effective. But I'm challenging you is to think about being inclusive is effective. And if we can tap into it, especially in this space around recognition and engagement, it can go a long way. So, leaders shifting their mindset, yes. Ideas for how this could be done, gosh, there's hundreds of ideas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
we even talked earlier about thinking outside the pizza party. But, you know, what if community was a way to create engagement? You have a lot of organizations that do volunteer days, right, where we all take a work day together and go. Maybe for a holiday we can volunteer with United Way, or if there's a natural
Mm-hmm.
disaster we can go and volunteer. We can serve food during the holidays. We can do any number of things to support the community around us, connect with each other as peers and as employees of the organization, and then also be able to bridge our personal values and those organizational values and put
Mm-hmm.
into action something that builds the community within the organization and together. We can have charitable giving matching. Now, you tend to see this at larger organizations, but anyone could set this up. It's just a little more paperwork on the HR side. But what if you matched employees' charitable giving up to a certain amount every year? And then it's almost like a 401k match that you typically see in bigger organizations, but it could be up to $500 a year. It could be something relatively small when it comes to financial investment. And then, what about local vendor partnerships? Who are you tapping into to plan events, cater things? Could be anyone from your 1099 bookkeeper or your cleaning company. How are those partnerships tied to community?
Mm-hmm.
What really is a shift in balancing inclusion and action, but also no one wants to have things done to them, right? We all want to feel like we're doing something together, doing something with people. So that's a big shift too. How do we do community together and not like, here's your pizza, connect with each other over this meal,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes. And I definitely see that too, because I've seen in my career more engagement when we've had same it's the same premise, right? It's the free lunch. You're still providing a free lunch. When you just do the pizza where you put in the pizza on the table and people are just going through the line, going back to the tables or their desk, and there's no interaction, it has meant almost nothing. When you do the barbecue where the leaders are serving, or you're doing an activity, or you're just spending time together, or it's been a fundraiser for some community event or nonprofit, that's been so much more meaningful, at least the feedback that I've received. Completely different vibe. And, or even the same thing with the t shirt. Giving away a t shirt, same t shirt, if you just give it away, never seen it worn. If it was a t shirt for an activity that someone did together, saw it worn all the time.
That's interesting. For me, it's always like, is the t-shirt white? Because then I can't wear it because I have a 1-year-old.
That, yes, fair, fair. Practicality in life, yes, for sure. So, some other thoughts come to mind too. It's like there's the individual things that we can do to start, little steps, things that you can do one offs, and then things that you can do ongoing. So we don't always have to be like, okay, I'm committed to something that I started and do it forever.
Mm-hmm.
You could do one thing just one time. I had a boss who realized that I used to do gift in jars. And I can't really remember how it all started, how he noticed. He noticed. And he asked, concept, right? Asked, hey, would you like for my family and I to save the jars that we use for your projects? And I was like, that would be great. Also asked, what types of jars would you like me to save? So there was no assumption made of like, I'm going to save like all the kinds of jars because pretty intuitive that I probably wouldn't be able to use all kinds of jars for my projects. Sometimes would even send pictures. Hey, found these jars. Could you use these?
Are these the ones?
Um, are these ones you could use? And it really meant a lot to me, right? But can you imagine if like Pat, we don't have a Pat who works for us, if same person just like dumped a bunch of jars on Pat's desk, like Maddie likes jars, so surely Pat will also like jars. Let me just dump jars. So sometimes the same thing is not going to be as meaningful to someone else. That's why it's so important to pay attention and ask,
Yeah.
because it's not going to have the same impact. Do one thing for one person, pay attention, great. We've done things like one year we've matched. Hey, if you we're going to match or we can contribute to the nonprofit of your choice, tell us where to send the check. Just a one time thing. We had the budget for it. We didn't have it a year after. That's okay too. We don't have to have a long term commitment for that. But we do have voluntary days. It's just a couple of them. I mean, it's not a week, but okay, but start somewhere. And I say that because sometimes I think we get overwhelmed with, we can't be United Way level and close the entire organization and build a house for someone, but you could do something.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point, which is, the jars on someone else's desk don't mean anything. And it brings to mind for me the anniversary gifts that come up at organizations that are sometimes rooted in a culture that is several generations past, where maybe, I absolutely have no use for the watch, right? For the gold
Mhm.
watch, and you love the gold watch. How are we recognizing those milestones in a way that person appreciates?
Even as simple as I remember as a vegetarian one time receiving the company turkey was, I mean, I gave it away to someone else. It was fine. But it's like,
Yeah.
so, but moving on from that. So, your organization does something I think really unique, and I really want to get into that because for folks who are not familiar with this concept, which I was not until you explained it to me, I really want to get into the nitty gritty of it and talk about even other ideas of doing things that maybe that to me was unconventional, a little bit
Yeah.
different, and other ideas, just brainstorming of for community engagement
Yeah,
and opportunity.
absolutely. So let me just talk a little bit about the UNFoundation, which is a model, right? One model of how you can do potentially charitable giving matches with an organization, any organization really. But ours is one that we see several folks that are what we call trustees. So trustees donate to the Giving Circle $100 a month. Right now we have about 30 trustees, and each month we have community members in the greater Chattanooga area that apply for the funds that we pool and give out each month. So we tend to have about 10 to 15 applications a month for our funding. And with 30 people giving $100, that's $3,000 a month that we
Mm-hmm.
are able to, what we say, fund cool ideas. So what does that look like? It could look like anything, Maddie. We've literally funded things in the last 14 years in our existence that have ranged from art, murals and installations and exhibits to youth sports, to teachers and social workers in schools, to outdoor projects, to hospitals, to you name it.
Mm-hmm.
We have funded things all over the spectrum. When we look at 2025 and the things that we funded 4 different neighborhood organizations and creating engagement within neighborhoods. We funded a lot of mutual aid that goes directly to people in the form of food or clothing or household items, things that are just general basic needs. And we also funded a local play at a high school. And so the things that we're able to kind of lean into and support tend to be grassroots ideas. They tend to be,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's for a bigger organization, like the city of Chattanooga, say, maybe it's an employee who applied for a grant. It's typically something new. It's something that they're thinking outside the box around, something that they have an idea and it just needs some seed funding to get it to happen. And then it can maybe be incorporated into kind of what they do. So the way that a lot of folks who are trustees operate is through their charitable giving matches with their companies. We have a large insurance company here in Chattanooga that does this model of charitable giving matching. So because the Unfoundation trustee pays $100 a month, an entire year is $1,200. That person will donate 600, and then the company will send the other half. And so it works out really well. And some of them do it as a bulk at the end of the year where they show that they've made charitable giving, and then they'll cut a check at the end of the year, or EFT, or whatever method they choose to do.
Mm-hmm.
Others, the way that it's set up is on a monthly basis. So that employee will donate $50 a month, and then the employer will send the other $50 every month. And so it can look a number of different ways, but what ends up happening is, I think this is especially important now for remote work, is that, one of our more recent trustees actually does remote work for a global banking institution. And that person is kind of new to Chattanooga. And
Mm-hmm.
what our model does is be able to plug her in to a group of like-minded folks who care about their community and want to amplify their impact around philanthropy, because we believe that everyone is a philanthropist, right? Whether you help me reach the item on the grocery store that I couldn't reach because I'm too short, or helped me at the checkout when I left my wallet at home, or whatever it is, right? We're all participating in philanthropy in some way. But if you are with a group of people that all want to amplify their impact, you get to create connection there. And there's this kind of social connection component to it. But also, you get connected to all these people in the community that want to make their community better. They're the people most proximate to the work. They're the people that are working at the nonprofits and working in government, or just regular citizens, because we fund Eagle Scouts and moms. And we once funded a woman who goes to thrift stores and buys winter coats and cleans them. And then she keeps them in the trunk of her car in the winter and gives them out to kids at bus stops who don't have coats. So it can
Oh,
just be anyone. But what happens is that participating in a group like this, in a charitable match, you're essentially a part of their journey to connect, to create engagement, to make their community better, to be a part of this bigger thing that then makes you feel good. And it ties your organization to that feel good. Does that
mm-hmm.
does that make sense?
No, that's yes, yes. And it's like when you said children's coats at bus stops. Ah, yes. So again, small, big, everyone having an opportunity to, in their sphere, to make an impact. And so, in your experience, what's the best way for folks to find out? Because sometimes these benefits, I mean, I'll admit, I don't work for a large organization right now, but I know sometimes these benefits get buried or we forget that we have them. What's a good way to find out? Do we have this benefit in our organization?
That's a great question. Each organization is different. I'm imagining that ideally this would have been part of an onboarding, right? When you started working there, that maybe they may have mentioned as part of a employee benefit. But certainly just raise your hand with the HR team, or people in culture or whatever it's called, and ask, even if they don't have it, right? Then this suggests that this is something that you value. Does our organization do charitable giving matching? What are some of the ways that I could create connection amongst where I live and tie it to my work? Is there, you know, ask, right? We started
That's
out this
right.
segment talking about how, as leaders, we need to ask the people that are affected by the decisions we make. But if you want to affect what happens at the leadership level as an employee, we got to ask, right?
That's right. And and we also talked about engagement surveys. So when folks, when you see that engagement survey, run through your email. When you're answering is what would make my work here more meaningful? Say, you know what I would love as part of my benefit package? If we did have charitable contribution matching, because I would love to be able to donate some of my money and have it stretch. And I know it's a tax savings for you as a company. So can we get this going?
Yeah, and you know what? That's a great point, Maddie, because a lot of times when we don't flex our brains and become more inclusive around the gold watch or the pizza party, it's because we feel like we've figured out that lane. We know we can do the pizza party and it's not going to be taxable, right? We know we can do milestone gifts and they're not going to be taxable for the employee. But if we ask them, they may say they want cash, and then that's taxable. And so then we have to give more. And there's all these kind of snowballed reasons why that would create problems. And so we just kind of can avoid it in general. I think listening to podcasts like this with you, Maddie, and staying up to date on, the different ways things can happen and ways that it can work, and ideas around what might be good in your organization. And maybe everything we mentioned today isn't necessarily relevant for the type of company that you're at. Ask the people that are working there. they're a great pool to tap into and talk about what would they enjoy and what have they experienced at other organizations. Might be a good question too to ask in your focus group that you're going to set up for employee leaders to
Mhm.
figure out what they want, because each culture is different, especially when you have remote work, hybrid workforces, or you're all in person, right? There are different things that you can flex into. This one though is really great for all of them,
Mhm.
because you can find giving circles like ours on Grapevine. Grapevine is
Okay.
a free platform for giving circles. So I can go in and type in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and find giving circles that are here. I can also find giving circles in Austin, Texas, or New York City, or where the largest giving circle in the world is in San Francisco, California, called Battery Powered. So there are giving circles everywhere, and it's one of the fastest growing movements in philanthropy because it puts regular people at the center of philanthropy instead of big foundations. I even support uh, religious institutions in starting giving circles, and nonprofits have giving circles. So it's definitely not new, but it is a way to do that charitable giving and allow the employee to live their values and tie it to the workplace. But it also is a way to create engagement and better a community where that person lives. So if you
Mhm.
have a workforce spread out all over the US, start a charitable giving program that's a small amount, right? It doesn't, you don't have to start out at big numbers. You could start out at $250 a year and encourage them to get involved in something that allows them to connect with other people and build community. That's what we love to do. The social
I
connection
love
component is really important.
I love that. I truly, truly believe this because we see it over and over in times of crisis, in times of a natural disaster. We see the human spirit come together and help each other. I believe people at the core are good and generous, and we will stand up and help each other. And when we do it in grassroots effort, we stand up, we help each other, and when we can see it in our community, it's so encouraging. That's why doing it in this giving circle format in your community. And if you find, hey, y'all, if you go in Grapevine and you don't find one in your community, I'm sure you'd be open, like, hey, look up in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Send it your way. There would be opportunity, right? They can still donate to your foundation, or no? How would that work?
Yeah, they could absolutely. Anyone send us money. We end up giving it away to people doing cool stuff anyway. But yeah, there's also another organization called the Awesome Foundation, and they have chapters all over the world. And they're giving circles limited to 10 people. But you can look up on their website and see if there's a location near you. There are so many options out there for how you can give, whether it's tithing through your church, whether it's donating to a specific nonprofit or volunteering at the United Way, right? We talk about time, treasure, talent in the giving spaces. And so the work to amplify your impact could be through your skills, it could be through your time and volunteering, or it could be through charitable giving, and involving your organization in that can amplify kind of how you feel about work on Sunday night.
This is amazing. And if you're listening, watching to this, and you're thinking, well, I want to do something. I don't know how to get started. I work for a 24/7 organization. I know closing down is not an option. There's other things we can do. I mean, there's school supply drives, there's food drives, there's money drives. I mean, there's all these giving circles. There's different things you can get involved in some way. I encourage everyone, look, you have an idea, drop it in the comments. You have an organization you're involved in that you're very proud of, that you want to link, drop it in the comments. The more information we can share, the better, because hey, you know what, maybe we're aligned with an organization that we're very passionate about, that is very much in line with our interests. That's okay, drop it in there. It may be a better match for someone. That still is a positive net effect for someone. I had not heard of this organization, now I have. It's just another tool in my little toolbox that I can share with people. And so please share as much information as possible, because I guarantee there's folks out there like, okay, now I can look up Grapevine, look in my own area, and maybe make those connections, whereas before I didn't know. And maybe there's folks that are like, I didn't even know this might be a thing in my organization. I'm going to look to see, do they have charitable match? This could be something that we just forget, out of sight, out of mind, and could be utilized to help and make an impact in your local community. So I'm excited that we're going to put this front and center so that folks can look it up and ask. Ask your leaders, ask HR, hey, what do we have where we can make an impact? Or is there something that we can do? If we can't close down to do an activity, what can we do internally to help and get involved? And if not, there's organizations out there that maybe you can get involved in if that's your thing. If not, then give us a hurrah and, and support, and that's okay too. Because agency and autonomy are important, and we get to choose how we want to be involved.
That's right. And, when you think about the HR professionals that are on the ground and the things that you care about, those things that you care about are retention, our engagement, our culture. I challenge you to think about one way that you can practice inclusion and loop in employees into the solution for some of these things. What do they think? What would make the culture within the organization better for them? And that could come through launching an engagement survey, but it could also come from just simple organic conversations of asking people what they want to see there. So what's the one thing that you can commit to at your organization to better get a pulse of what employees want to see there, how they want to be celebrated, and what would make them feel excited about work Sunday night?
That is the question. That is the key takeaway. This is so fantastic. I will definitely drop all the links in the show notes. But Melanie, go ahead and tell us how folks can connect with you. Tell us the name of the organizations again that you want to make sure people hear you say to connect with you, to look up.
Thanks, Maddie. So again, the UNFoundation, our website is the UNFoundation, not the United Nations Foundation, but the unfoundation.org. On there, you can see every single grant we've ever funded in the last 14 and a half years. You can also learn about what it means to be a trustee and what are the things that we've funded. That work as an executive director came after 14 years of volunteering as a board member and originally a trustee. So I know all of the facets of the organization. We're currently working on a resource guide to assist nonprofits and similar organizations to start their own giving circles, because we believe in the movement of giving circles for doing good and social connection. But that work is fractional. I have my own company, Rad Work, that's radwrk.com, where I am a strategic gap filler for small businesses and nonprofits to come in, use my MBA brain to solve problems and move out. And one of those pieces of work that I get to do, and I'm so excited to get to do for the last 4 years, is the fractional COO for Hinton Company, a culture and leadership firm that is really dedicated to improving cultures from the top down and the bottom up through assessments, governance, support, and guidance around, again, what it feels like to work there. And so thank you so much for having me, Maddie. I love that this was actually the perfect intersection of all of the things that I get to do in life. I was able to sit here and talk to you about a model, the UNFoundation, that ties into culture and leadership work within organizations, and also kind of swing it all back around to my own company and my own business, which your own podcast had me on. So thank you for allowing me to be here today. I'm glad we figured out what Krantzsy connected us for.
Yes, and I am glad we connected. I am glad you took the time. This is an important conversation. It's essential. We are all humans working in the workforce. It's important to keep engaged for the business, for profitability, but most of all because we need to support each other and show value to each other and for each other. So thank you for sharing that platform and for your time. And until next time, we are HR Office Hours. Don't forget to follow Melanie, and I will drop all those links in the description. And until next time, thanks so much.